When traveling, we generally prefer to rent a car and drive ourselves around the destination we are visiting, so we jumped on the chance to drive in China when they recently opened it up for foreign visitors to drive there. Our road trip started in Urumqi and ended in Kashgar in Xinjiang, and we covered about 3,000 kilometers of driving. During that time, we gathered some practical experiences that we wanted to share with you in this video, so let's get started. First off, the basics. Chinese drive on the right side of the road with the steering wheel being on the left side of the vehicle. They use the metric system, so signs will be in kilometers per hour for speed, kilometers for distance, and kilograms for weight. The road rules are the same as they are everywhere in the world, where traffic lights, give way, yield, speed limits, and road markings have the same meaning as they would in your home country. There are some signs that you cannot read in Chinese, but these were never important or consequential enough to cause any issues. There are lots of different styles of traffic lights. Depending on where you are, they are generally very obvious and show a countdown to when the light will change. There is, however, one style of traffic lights we encountered that we found to be easy to miss. These are mostly in rural areas outside of cities, and because they use one light that changes color and is mounted lower and in the middle of the road, we did inadvertently miss a couple of them on our trip. So keep an eye out for these. Most cities have large bike and scooter lanes on all major roads, so when making turns, don't make a mistake and drive into one of these, as sometimes they are quite wide, so pay attention and do shoulder checks. Now, one requirement that is different in China is that, as a foreign visitor, you cannot drive in the country without a valid license issued by Chinese authorities, so your foreign-issued driver's license or an international driver's license are not permitted. And no car rental agency will give you a car without a locally issued driver's license. So in order to drive, you need to do some paperwork and get a temporary driver's license once you get to China. I have a separate video on the process and requirements which you can watch for more information. Another point worth mentioning is paying for stuff. This doesn't really apply to driving except when you have to fill the car up with gasoline, but your foreign-issued credit cards will likely not work while filling up your car, so you can try to use cash. Bearing in mind that some gas stations may not be that cash-friendly or use Chinese payment apps. Check out my other video for details on how to pay for things in China. Speaking of gas stations, all gas stations in China are full serve, meaning that there is always an attendant who operates the pump and collects payment. Almost none of these attendants will speak your language, so be ready with the translation apps or sign language. Another interesting point we encountered on our trip through Xinjiang is that gas stations are gated, and a Chinese ID needs to be scanned to open the gate. Since we are foreigners and do not have a Chinese ID, we always had to call the manager of the station to let us in, and they always did after taking a photo of our passport and license plate. We only saw this in Xinjiang, though, and never experienced gated gas stations in any other province we visited. One important consideration while driving in China is finding your way to your destination and which navigation app to use. Google Maps is useless in China. It will show you where you are and do some basic functions, but is mostly outdated and unable to calculate directions properly, so you need to use a local Chinese app if you want to find your way easily. We used Pedal Maps, which is available on the App Store and Play Store, and worked extremely well on our trip, with some features that frankly put Google Maps to shame. There are other navigation apps that will work in China, such as Here We Go, so do some research on that. Once you leave the city and get on the highway, and as you travel between counties or provinces, you will run into police checkpoints where, once they find out you're a foreigner, will ask you to pull over and will register your passport. They may ask the name of the hotel you're staying at or a few other questions about your destination, but they are always friendly and generally ask this as part of a standard process they are following, or sometimes they are just curious. Highways in China, especially major ones which have a 1 to 3 digit designation starting with a G or an S, have lots of services and are generally very well maintained. This costs money, of course, which is why you will find that most expressways and highways will have toll stations and you need to pay to use them. How much you pay depends on the distance traveled and is automatically calculated based on your license plate number, and you either pay at the toll gate or if you have an electronic tag, just breeze through and will be charged later. Most rental cars will have an electronic tag, and so you can pass through the ETC lane at the toll gates. On our 2-week, 3,000-kilometer journey, we paid just over 500 yuan. These highways also have lots of service stops, or rest stops. These are usually every 40 to 60 kilometers and have all sorts of services, including gas stations, toilets, convenience stores, refreshments and coffee, restaurants, and even exhibits and massage chairs. You will always tell that one is coming up through the big P signs on the side of the highway. Another important point to be aware of while driving in China is the location and prevalence of speed cameras. These are pretty much on every major road within cities and every few kilometers on highways. These cameras will often take a photo of your car as you pass them, which you can tell because a flash will go off while taking the image. This can get annoying when there is lots of traffic passing and you see all the flashes ahead as you approach the camera. There are usually road signs warning you that a speed camera is coming up, and pedal maps always warned us as well. We found that in many instances, cars would be speeding, then would slow down as they approached these speed cameras. This is perhaps why we also ran into a lot of average speed zones, where cameras at the start and the end of the speed zone snap your picture, and based on the timestamps, calculate your average speed. Pedal maps also warned us about these and had a neat feature that calculated our average speed through these zones so we can be sure to be under. We are not sure what happens when these cameras catch you speeding, but there were other times where we did see enforcements on the road where they were pulling cars over for traffic infractions, including us when we were pulled over by police. Bear in mind that police also use drones for traffic enforcement, so just because there are no cameras around doesn't mean you're not being caught. Take a look at our road trip video to see how and why we were pulled over and how we got out of it. Another interesting observation regarding enforcement is that we often saw decommissioned police cars parked at the side of the highway as decoys, which you were not sure of until you approached it. Some of them also had solar-powered circuits that flashed their lights at night. There were also plenty of life-size police statues on the sides of highways and roads. In the end, one of the best things about driving yourself is the ability to stop whenever and wherever you want, which came in really handy as we drove around Xinjiang and couldn't help but stop very often to admire and take in the stunning scenery and majestic landscapes. Like many other scenic drives, we often found places where we can safely pull over and park the car without blocking the road or acting dangerously, and the frequent viewpoint stops really helped us there. One last point about driving in China. Like anywhere else in the world, you will run into reckless or aggressive drivers and other types of vehicles that get in your way, so be patient and practice defensive driving like you would in your home country, and consider the culture differences. For example, other drivers may sometimes honk at you when passing you just to let you know they're there, not because they are mad. In the end, always remember that you are a guest in China, so be respectful. We were glad we managed to drive in China and found it rewarding and so much better than having someone drive us around. If you liked this video, then please hit the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to see my other videos. Thanks for watching.